Okay, I think we're sure Amber's on, and I think okay, so they'll be joining us via video as well. So let's go ahead and get started.
No, sir, I do not.
Anybody have anything from last week's? Awesome. Okay. Amber's meeting. I don't like the little. Very smug. Thank you, Michael. That was good. Let's go ahead and go right into
Everybody, good to be with you tonight. It is very common for us to return to council after every snow and regard to efforts our snow fighting team have undertaken throughout the season. Saw in your memo some of the vital statistics pertaining to the efforts of our so on. One of the points I want to be sure you understand is we did not measure 16 feet of snow in 25. That was inches. Quite a different extreme. And otherwise, create in your mind. Now, 2023, as you saw in your memo, was pretty drastic as well as not. Nonetheless, council also asked that we have a conversation as it relates to snow removal on sidewalks. So we thought we'd marry the two topics with regard to this opportunity that we have in front of you tonight. It's fair to tackle both in our discussion. So without any further ado, I could invite Mr. Cepeda and Lynch up to walk us through that information. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. You gentlemen.
So I have Casey Lynch here with me. He's a streets supervisor, acting. So for snow removal debrief, essentially, 2025 has not been a very heavy year with snow. And that's good. You'll notice used de-icer there in our outputs, our snow metrics in 2025. The cost has risen there. We also call that
ice kicker.
Ice kicker. But we've used quite a large amount of tons of that this year, 2025. That's October through April is generally how we measure that snow season. And you can see, obviously, as Carter had mentioned, larger use. We have more snow, and 2023 was a big year in that. As far as our operation in general, we have different classes of priorities when it comes to plowing. We've got Class A, which is typically our emergency routes and critical routes. We have Class B, which is our collector streets, arterial streets, and then we've got Class C, which is residential. So typically those classes follow order of importance of which streets get the priority in that case. We also have levels of snow to which we start, I guess we indicate on the category of removal. Those levels mainly refer to those with the sidewalk removal. Anything less than 2 inches, we typically de-ice, and then anything that's more than that by our full plowing operations to that. And then anything on a higher level, level 3 would basically indicate snow events that have large accumulations of snow over snow events, essentially. May have been some melt in between, but basically snow on top of ice. That's a general assessment of how we basically assess snow removal and with our priorities and everything else. And as far as a debrief for our snow, but for the most part, our crews work around the clocks when they do this. They work really hard. I think actually 8-hour shifts is probably 12-hour shifts right now. So really with our operations, we operate in a way where we try to clear these different snow routes as needed, and then we do have windrows that we put in, and with those windrows we have our crews to come by and pick up that snow and haul it off. We've gotten a lot of feedback on the windrows, but really there's not a lot of space. That's the best way to keep traffic operational functions going in the right of way so that they get to where they need to go safely. As far as sidewalks, snow removal, to get into more depth of that, we took a look at our current ordinances and our current code here. And in fact, I believe several years ago there's some mention of some recommendations of trying to see if there could be more to address snow within our code, and what requirements would be put on property owners. Most of that being what's their responsibility with regards to actual removal on the sidewalks, and as well as should they be pushing snow into the right of way, should be, and also where should snow be stored with regards to that snow accumulation, not moving that from one place to another. All of those aren't very clear, I guess, in our current code, and there's no current ordinance to address that. So obviously, we're bound by our state statutes when it comes to responsibilities there, and an ordinance has to create that. Do not have a current ordinance with that, but again, any obstruction within the right of way by our code is not authorized as far as snow is concerned. Snow is included with amongst many other things. We also state on our website that property owners should clear snow and ice accumulations from their sidewalks. We mentioned that there's no current ordinance with that. I offer any questions about our update or sidewalk.
Questions about storm?
Thanks, gentlemen, for being here for the information. My question was mostly, thank you, Carter, for the clarification. I figured it was 16 inches and not feet. 16 feet sounded a little high, considering the winter we had. But I was surprised that you used significantly more de-icer this year compared to last. You also plowed quite a few more miles and had more snow events in the past 2 years. And so I guess I was looking for clarification on what do we, sorry, I could have Googled this, it's probably somewhere, but what do we classify as a snow event? And if you could provide some additional context about how we ended up plowing so many miles and putting so much de-icer down? Was it just a lot of ice activity with very little snow, or just, just looking for context? Because, my experience was that we had a super mild winter. I only saw snow a couple times, so I was just kind of curious.
I'd have Casey maybe address what we have for, what classifies as a snow event.
Yeah. Yes, Mayor Counselor, snow event, we would classify, basically every time we come in and do snow, we're gonna call that a snow event. Some of them lead into others. So like in 2023, we didn't have very many because it was one big giant snow event. So, but yes, this year, it's been a really mild winter, not very many inches, but there have been quite a few events where we've come in. There's been a couple where we're like less than an inch, but it goes over and we have to treat it the same way. So 4-inch snowstorm.
So a lot less at one time, just more
Yeah.
accumulation over. Okay. That makes sense.
Yes. Do you mind if I, one of the statistics that I always find very interesting is with regard to the time that you dedicate to picking up windrows, and the problem that is made when you have a monster mountain of snow that invariably came from an adjoining commercial property. Do you mind going through that, Casey, with a little volume to your presentation?
Yeah, so, yeah, additional snow, so we put up the windrows because, the reasons Alex explained. And we also, so also for drainage issues too, because we don't want to clog the catch basins with snow if we put them over the catch basins during, winter time. But, when somebody adds volume to it, now we're trying to make openings for parking lots or different things. Now we've got another more volume of snow there, so it's harder to make those openings for parking lots. Plus, it turns into a safety hazard. There's a spot on Second Street that we have a problem with. They push it out right after we've gone through and cleared the street, and they just push it out into the middle of Second Street, and then it turns into this problem as well for traffic. So there's several issues. It does cause a big safety concern.
Mayor, councilors, if I could. The other one this year, I mean, we had some significant snowstorms. Because I remember several of them where they were plowing for several days in a row because it kept snowing. And so we had some significant snowstorms. Then we also have these ones where it can thaw a little bit and then it starts to freeze. And so when I look at these statistically, I look at the number of events, the number of miles, and the amount of ice slicer. There's some linearity to that. I see that as being fairly linear when I compare, those numbers to each other, with 2023 being the higher year, so it exceeded it for miles, it exceeded it for ice slicer. Last year was lower than this year, but there was, again, 17 events this year and a significant amount of plowing. And I would elaborate a little more. It does create some very significant challenges. Every year, this year it's going to be Casey's responsibility. We're looking for a place to pile the snow. As we go, the first place we go is downtown because of narrow streets and pick that snow up. And thank God we have the old American Pie property. The library property is one where we used to pile that snow, but we're always struggling trying to find, because as new developments take place, like jump crazing up there, we used to pile more snow up there. Well, when somebody develops that way, you can no longer pile snow up there. So we're always trying to find places. And that's very critical if people that are plowing their own big lot. You can imagine if Walmart pushed all their snow into the middle of 2nd Street, that'd be a giant volume of snow that we would, spend a lot of money. And so to me, that's the tailored nature of this ordinance, is to not be very broad sweeping, but to be very focused on those people that can really impact our snowing operations and make it safe for emergency vehicles and the public to travel. Because if they do just continue to plow it into the streets, it creates big problems for Casey and his crews. Because the first task is to clear the traveled way. We do the windrow in the middle and make sure, and that keeps going on until those are safe, and then they go to the first tier, then the second tier. Rarely ever get to the 3rd tier, but to keep it clear, and then right after that they're cleaning it up. So they're not in their initial phases. If somebody's pushing snow out there, they don't have the equipment on there to scoop it and haul it away. They're focused on plowing the roads.
Questions, comments? Carl?
Thank you, Tom, for that additional context. In regards to the ordinance enforcement, I'm just curious. It sounds like we have state statute, you know, requires property owners to remove snow, prevents them from, like has been discussed, putting it in the public right away. How often, if ever, have we charged anyone with that ordinance or with that statute? Just out of curiosity. I mean, it sounds like you got a couple habitual offenders. Are they at least on notice? Have we ever actually exercised?
I'm unaware of it's ever charging anybody.
Yeah,
Maybe Alex
Mayor,
knows.
councilors, I don't know of any, but usually code enforcement do that. Yeah. It's like,
Mayor, if I might, Mayor, Council, just so one clarification, the state statute allows us to regulate that should we adopt an ordinance. And so at some point in the past, back in the 80s, we had a more explicit ordinance that required sidewalk clearing from certain types of commercial properties, different zoning areas. That, when our municipal ordinance was recodified, was not carried forward. And so the only ordinance we currently have is 12.24.030, sidewalk obstructions prohibited. And it's probably not the model of clarity, but it does make it unlawful for any person to place upon their adjacent sidewalk or their half of the street any brokenware or glass, filth, rubbish, refuse matter, ice, water, et cetera, or other like substances. So I think you could make the argument that that would prohibit the pushing of snow into the street adjacent to your property. I can tell you in the 2+ years that I've been here, I'm unaware of any of those types of matters that have come through municipal court. I can certainly check with Jackie and with some certainty, but nothing strikes my recollection.
Thank you. I was just curious how common of an issue it was, and you know, I like most code enforcement, it's driven, and you gotta be naughty probably a few different times before you ever get to interact with code enforcement or have a consequence levied against you. But I guess I'll always take the opportunity for a public service announcement and just remind people, don't push it into the street, man. And if you see somebody on your block doing it, go over and give them a little grief. I know I've stopped probably 4 or 5 people that I've seen snow blowing into the middle of the street. So, you know, a little bit of shame goes a long way sometimes.
Yes.
Just as a matter of context, we did bring up a draft ordinance a few years back, probably 5 years ago, if memory serves correctly. And that would have made it, you know, much more explicit of a conflict with the law for commercial properties to empty their parking lots into the street. And council did not decide to move forward with that suggestion. And so we are left with what it is that the city attorney just reviewed.
Thank you, Carter, for that. Before we leave the topic, I am curious. Discussed the fact that the denser our development gets and the more development spreads, fewer options we have for placing the, you know, those windrows and stuff. And so I'm curious if we have, or if it would benefit council in the city to have a strategy keeping certain lots available. You know, my guess is the cost to move that snow further and further grows exponentially. So does it make strategic sense to have all plots scattered around the city for the purposes of they can in the nice months operate as otherwise just kind of natural areas, but in the winter you actually have areas to dispose of snow? Do you have any sort of strategy in that regard?
Mayor, Councilor, we don't. I think it's I'm certainly willing to entertain this with planning and zoning, but I think it becomes kind of a prickly pear. Because in general, we want to support infill in the city and not promote the sprawl of people that are building outwards. You know, it's a challenge. It hasn't become insurmountable. And I don't really think the cost is exponential, because we have the cost of scooping the snow up or blowing it in there with a snow blower and then hauling it. If we have to haul it an extra mile, you know, that's a smaller incremental cost. It certainly doesn't go exponential. So I think, you know, we're handling it okay now. There's certain areas right by the wastewater treatment plant that are areas that aren't going to be developed. I personally would certainly hope that the area where the library's at, that area develops and we don't just keep it for snow, because I think it could be a beautiful addition to our community and nice infill development. So we don't have that. While I am speaking, I do want to recognize Parks and Rec, because Parks and Rec is the group that takes the lead on plowing the snow for all the pathways in the parking lots. And so that group is very aggressive, they all work very closely together. They're in the same building and work very closely together and fill in for each other when they have challenges and problems. And if we have a huge snowstorm and there's a big concert at the event center, guess what? The streets guys are up at the event center helping them out. And so it's a collaborative effort. And believe me, in Casey's position, it's they're watching the snow tells all the time, trying to figure out what's coming on. And previous to Casey, when Shad was out there, I'd have phone calls with him at 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning saying, all right, are we going to have school today? When, do we get the crew mobilized and ready to go? And so they start very early in the morning, both our Great Parks crews and our streets crews, to do that plowing.
This is a question, but I just want to say thanks for bringing this to us and showing the information. But something I learned not long ago was that Casper, I don't know how rare it is, but not all communities create windrows and remove the snow eventually. Some communities, Minneapolis to be specific, which probably gets a lot more snow than we do, just plows the streets and just wherever it ends up, it ends up. And so windrows are kind of, I used to kind of cursing them too, but I think they're kind of a blessing and a curse. But I think they're in the long run, you eventually pick up the are good. So just thought that was an interesting tidbit. Thanks again for being.
Mr. Mayor, I appreciate that observation, Counselor. I would say that Casper does what it can to make snow as least a nuisance as possible. Having served in communities that do it both ways, Casper, of course, being a windrow model, the fact is it gets to a point where you have to pick up the snow anyway, and having the snow in a much more accessible spot to get it out of the way versus trying to dig it out of the gutters and out of the drainage lines and around cars and all that kind of thing makes it much less accessible and much more labor intensive and time intensive and so on. So while there certainly are pros and cons with both models, the windrow model, I think, makes it much easier if the community places a premium on having it out of the way in a reasonable amount of time so that it doesn't mess with curb lines and other access issues, driveways, not the least of which are a problem as well.
Any other questions for? Yep.
Since I brought it up. So, I mean, ideally looking over what we looked at, what I would really like to go for is that we have residents, homeowners, follow the city's ordinance of 4 a.m. to 4:30 p.m. But I feel like I've already gotten attempt to keep your property safe, they won't cover it. So if somebody gets hurt because you didn't shovel, you've got a potential big problem anyway. The homeowner's guy told me so. But in any case, the whole conversation came up in this part because of school zones. I would at least like us to have something that says you have to have the sidewalks clear in a school zone. I would really like it to say that they have to do what we have to do.
So I'll just kind of look at staff and Eric. I'll start with Eric and maybe I'll come with you guys. What?
Yeah, I mean, we can craft whatever council directs us to craft, I think. I mean, legally, we have pretty broad authority. And so that specific ask would be a pretty easy addition. If you want to do something beyond that, I'd want to give the staff to figure out how to attack it.
completely. I think adding snow makes it very clear that if we do go after somebody that is a problem person that continues to pile their snow there, if they would explicitly state it's snow. And just like all code enforcement, our initial process is to work with the property owner, not to go out there with a code book and whack them in the head with it, but to go out there and say, hey, work with you. There is an ordinance that says this, and we look with you to find other ways for you to plow your snow. And I know from previous conversations with Shad, he's had some of those conversations in those areas. And so again, our whole approach is to try and work with them and not just go out there and try and how many tickets can we write? How miserable can we make the public?
Margaret, I was going to ask you your thoughts too.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. And I think I would just elaborate a little bit on what Tom just said. As long as council is comfortable with the idea that you wouldn't expect some level of patrol activity on the part of staff, I think we could use that in the case of egregious matters and issues, so that indeed, those kinds of things can be dealt with a reasonable tool that would be in place. And I would say having that minor adjustment would probably help in the form of a more effective tool for the egregious issues, not for patrol type activity.
So let me ask council, are we amenable to taking that up? And having Eric and staff kind of look at what that would look like based upon what Brandy's suggestion would be. Yep, Amber says yeah. Awesome. So, that fair, guys? Awesome. Thank you so much. Appreciate it. Let me also say this really quick. This is on my mind. I really, really, really would like to thank not only the staff, but the individuals that are out there every single day when they're working super hard. They do a fantastic job. And you're very spoiled in the city of Casper. I want to make sure that's something that's recognized, the work that you guys do, the efforts that you guys put into the city does not go unnoticed. I hope the community really appreciates the work that you guys do. It's not easy. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thanks.
Complaints about Washington Park. Or somebody walking their dog, never plowed, I don't know.
Sidewalks, you mean?
Yeah.
That's part of our responsibility, Carter?
Mr. Mayor, Councilor, the sidewalks around parks are our responsibility, and we do our dead level best to get around to them as often as we can during storms. Zulima can certainly elaborate on that more if you'd like, but yes, they are our responsibility, those sidewalks.
Council, okay to hear a little bit from Zulima on that?
Mayor, councilors. So as Tom mentioned, the City Parks Division is responsible for snow removal. We actually have 3 priority areas where we work to remove snow from parking lots for public buildings. So as you would imagine, removing snow from City Hall so that staff can be here and so that the public can access the building. The transit parking lot gets plowed, the senior center, the cemetery, service center, the event center. So we have a priority list of pretty much the most frequented public facilities where we need to clear parking to allow staff and visitors to come to those facilities. So those are our priority 1. Then we have priority 2 areas where we're serving some of our bigger parks, Highland Park, City Center building, some of our major pathways along the river in the city fall into those priority 2s. And then priority 3 are somewhat based on whether or not there are events. So things like certain lots at the Ford Wyoming Center, if there is not a scheduled event, would be a lower priority. Obviously, if there are scheduled events, they rise to a higher priority. Weekends are generally, we will hit the rec center, the senior center, the ice arena, our facilities that are open on the weekends. And then the city bus stops also generally rise to a higher priority, and we're responsible for removal on those. Some of our park sidewalks, unfortunately, do fall in that priority 3 level, just surely because of resources. We just don't have the the staff manpower or the equipment to have everybody out there. And then of course the winds, just like they wreak havoc with streets, they wreak havoc with our sidewalks, our parking lots, and our trails. And that oftentimes we're having to go to areas repeatedly to bust out drifts and other issues that are happening because of the winds. So it is oftentimes that we don't even make it to the priority 3 areas because we're trying to get through those higher priority areas, and oftentimes we have to revisit. But I can assure you, based on the complaint that we got about Washington, we have elevated Washington Park and Conwell Park into our priority 2s, trying to hit those a little bit sooner if we have the opportunity to do those, and continue to evaluate on a year-by-year basis. Where we see increased visitorship to certain parks or certain areas, we'll adjust those priorities based on what we see the community need being. But we just unfortunately don't have the resources to make it to all the parks, every sidewalk, every trail. We often get complaints about the trail system throughout the community because there's only certain sections of trail that are really heavily used that we can plow. And over 14 miles of trails throughout the community, we just don't have the resources to plow them all.
Questions for Zelina? For coming out. Okay, let's go ahead and move along then. Massage therapy movements.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, councilors. This has been a conversation that council's been heavily engaged in. The city attorney's office, Fleur's team in the clerk's office, and fortunately and thankfully, members of the massage therapy community as well, as you well know. We are coming forward with a proposal that might surprise you, but indeed we are suggesting that the current ordinance be rescinded for the most part with regard to the certification and licensure that has been a fairly new development over the last 3 or 4 years or so. I have asked that Fleur give you some insight with regard to how we came to this conclusion, if you will. And then, of course, I think it'd be helpful for the attorney to weigh in terms of how to procedurally go through that and elements that, may need to stay in the codification, as it were. So without any further ado, Mr. Mayor, if I could invite Fleur up to walk us through that, that'd be great.
Your Honor, members of council. So as the city manager stated, we are suggesting that we repeal the portions of massage therapy out of this ordinance. So as you know, back in 2020, council was asked to look at this. Council formed a committee, went through it with a bunch of therapists as well as some council members, and came up with this ordinance. We've used this ordinance for the past over 4 years, found that it wasn't working as was intended. And so then in fall, we came back with some suggestions as to what we could do to make it work. But after looking at that further with direction of council and meeting with therapists, I think the best course of action is actually to repeal it. It's not working as it's intended, and we don't think it can work at the city level appropriately. We don't have the expertise to do this here at this level, and so we think the best course of action is to remove it from our city ordinance and then encourage the state to take it up as it is in like 47 other states. So we did meet with several massage therapists and even some of the proponents who came in asking for the ordinance to be put in. And they are all in agreement that it's not working and that they don't think it will work at this level, and that the best course of action is to repeal. So we feel comfortable proposing this to council with all of this now information gathered. So we just ask for council suggestions, and then the city attorney can go through the process and we can answer any questions you may have about licensure.
Questions or suggestions or anything? Yeah,
I just have a question about, in the memo, it mentions that individuals who are able to obtain licensure, untrained individuals are able to obtain licensure, while those who receive training are unable to obtain licensure under the current guidelines. Can you elaborate on that a little bit? I just kind of counterintuitive, but I just don't understand.
Sure. So we found that because it's very specific as to what the requirements are, that you have to have an NCLEX, that sometimes we're getting NCLEX scores from people don't have a lot of training, and people who have a lot of training but just don't have that NLEX. And so it's hard for us to quantify that and to look at any other schooling. We have that in there because we don't have the expertise to like look at classes that you may have taken and credits you may have received. And so because of that, we feel like it's not really, what we're doing isn't effective. I don't know if that answers your question.
Yeah, Pat.
So I'm unsure when you talk total appeal or whether things we're leaving in because the ordinance contains something else or.
Your Honor. Yes, so that ordinance covers a lot of other businesses within public health, so it's everything. And we just put massage therapy in there, so we just want to take out all the massage therapy items, but the other public health, restaurants, hotels, all the others that we license remain in that.
I'm gonna get Eric and then I'll come to you, Michael.
Yeah, Mayor, Councilor, yeah, just to kind of elaborate on that a little bit. The city of Casper does not have a general business license. So historically, certain sectors have been subject to a specific license requirement, like restaurants, and we work with the health department and so forth. And when this came up several years ago, like two licensure requirements around massage therapy currently. One is a permit for the business itself, and the other is individual license for the practitioner. So if council agrees, what we would do is go in and basically strip out any specific references to massage therapy, both with regard to the permit and to the licensure for the individual, and go basically back to like a pre-2021, 2020, whenever it was adopted, version of the ordinance where we would have certain specific entities that would still be subject to a specific license, but massage therapy would not.
Eric, just answer most of my question. I think I heard you say too, any business in Casper, including massage therapists, have a state business license. In the Secretary of State's office, is that correct?
No, it's not correct. So majority of other states with regard to massage therapy have a state level board like cosmetology. So if there was a desire among practitioners to approach the state to do something on a statewide level, I think we would be supportive of that. But I mean, just like any other business, I mean, if they're going to incorporate, they'd have to go through the Secretary of State, but there's nothing specific to massage therapy on the state level.
Sure. Any business that charges a fee for their services, collects taxes, yes. Businesses need to be inquiries with the Secretary of State's office.
Unless they're sole proprietorship. If they're an LLC corporation, then they have to register with the state.
So there's not a, that's correct. There's not a general license on a state level, but they would have to if they're incorporated LLC, go through the Secretary of State. If they're collecting sales tax, they would have to revenue. I mean, there's those specific requirements at the state level, but in terms of licensure, in order to be able to conduct a business, there's not a state business license. So
The questions for.
Yeah. So, here, thank you. So I'm a little, so I've been at council meetings at Barnum and not recently, but those where they've approved their business license, whether it be a mechanic shop or a smoke shop or whatever. And I've never recalled we have anything like that.
there was a discussion, well, not long after I started, so maybe a year and a half ago, around would the city want to do a general business license, because some of the neighboring municipalities do have that. And I think council's decision at the time is,
Could I? So, Mayor, I got a hold of Leah Juarez, but Floor had and staff had already talked to her. I mean, she's in agreement We also have a person here tonight that has written counsel a lot and given us some great ideas, what little time I've been around, but I didn't know if he could address his thoughts.
Mayor, Council, I'm not sure, I didn't speak with Mr. Winino directly. I know I have received his communications, but we did have a couple separate meetings with massage therapists, and I think representatives of a group of about 20 or 30. And so it's my understanding that it's unanimous that, yeah, it's opinion of therapists to go ahead and, support the repeal. I think if I understood some of the comments is if council decided to have some form of regulation, here are the, things that they would recommend doing to streamline it. But after a lot of consultation internally with the clerk staff, and also I don't want to leave out the PD. We met with Chief Cheney. We just came to the decision and hence the recommendation that it just wasn't working. Kind of bureaucracy with no purpose, if you will, and so our recommendation would be.
I think we'll hold off, not because I think a lot of communication. I know you guys have been talking with the city and doing, and I think that's a really important thing. That was actually one of the things that I was going to say is that the strong support from the massage therapy community has been very supportive of this. So the strong support gives me enough comfort to support this. So. Anything else? Okay, how does council feel about supporting this move to rescind that? Okay.
So is that something that would go with
I'd like to thank all the massage therapists that have been a part of this and helped out, be a part of the process to communicate what your best needs are. That's the most important thing, is that sometimes government gets in the way, right? And so I appreciate that. Thank you, Fleur.
3 readings.
Okay, moving right along, we have an agenda review. Carter, do you want to go over anything specific or just general, whatever you want to do?
Well, Mr. Mayor, councilors, I think it's fair to warn you that the work sessions from here till, July 1 are probably going to be pretty action-packed because we've got a number of things we need to go through with you. Helps us put the rest of the budget together, and so be mindful that we're going to be not as light on the agenda as you may have seen tonight. So you'll notice as you look through the grid document here that indeed that would be the case. Just because we want to be sure we get a lot of direction from you from here on out pertaining to issues that tie very nicely with the budget preparation process. One of the items that I want to bring to your attention is with regard to priority-based budgeting. I know that there was some consternation a few weeks ago about how to make that council priority process a little more consumable, not only for you, but for the public. And your task force that has been, essentially volunteered to participate in working through that has come through really, really nicely. And we will have a deliverable on the 13th for you to evaluate. It sure seems to me that it's going to be much more consumable, bite-sized, if you will. Beyond that, I like to direct your attention to the back page as well, so you can see what the horizon looks like for topics that may or may not be included in terms of what you have an interest in. So please check that and make sure we don't let anything fall through the cracks. Otherwise, that's all I have.
I know we'll get to counselor on the table, but does anybody have any specific things on the agenda, the coming agendas or anything?
So just to back up a second, I know there's several licenses, massage licenses pending. Did those folks just go ahead and practice before the repeal?
Mr. Mayor, Counselor Sweeney is right. We routinely get questions about how to navigate the process for licensure and so forth. And so I guess I'd defer to Fleur and Eric in terms of how to proceed, if that is okay with you. Do you want to help us address that?
Sorry. So I missed the question.
If you want to do that,
So, yeah,
that'd be great.
Council, so there were a couple that had been initially they were we were having these discussions. Those will probably just go away in terms of kind of, so we'll discuss, I think, internally. I mean, technically, still readings and it's field, it's still law. I suppose. Saying that, I hate to have people go through the process that they wait 6 weeks to go away. I think we'll have to just have some internal discussions around it. Not go through it. And be able to work. Essentially. Okay.
Yes, I agree. We've also been telling people in the process of renewing, wait and holding off on this to make sure that we're not putting them through unnecessary steps. So it's not part of that big process.
Yesterday, I don't know if you guys get the emails, but I don't know. I didn't look who Tina from the chamber sent it to, but I don't know if those people are waiting or if they were denied or.
Mr. Mayor, Counselor, I'm not totally sure if we're seeing the same email, but we've been in communication with Ms. Heinrich, and I think we're on the same page.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Anything else about the future agenda items? Okay, let's do around the table, please. Amber, do you care if we start with you?
I don't have anything tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Michael. I don't have anything. Jenna.
I have one thing I went to was met with the municipal band. So they submitted their budgets and all of that last week, and then their schedule for the summer's programs and the rehearsals and the dates. So I had asked for that to be put into the informational packet, and Jackie did that for me. So it's in your information packet, their schedule, and also asked if David could put it on the Stall Talk News to get the word out there, and he did that too. So just saying thank you for getting that communication out. And if there's anything else that we can do, put it on the city website or something, that'd be awesome.
Thank you.
Well, I went to the opioid interviews and I think we have decided that we.
When I'm on the 15th.
And I think we have one scheduled to get there so that we can make those words smaller for everybody. That's all I do.
Just want to thank the PBB task force for working and putting the time and effort into it. And it sounds like from what Carter has said that it's coming together very nicely and they're working very, very hard. So appreciate you guys.
I missed you.
I asked Carter, I said, do you need me to be on the board? He said, no, you have so much talent on there. It would be too overwhelming.
So, after receiving Mr. Schriftman's second email about people not collecting 6 cents, I called to find out if I could contact the Department of Revenue myself. I've also had a few other calls from people confused or trying to follow the geomap mapping. So I had a really good conversation with the director, Brenda Hansen, and then Brett, that heads up the Excise Sales and Excise Tax Division. They feel they've sent several notices besides the email or the newsletter. Plus, they've taken other actions. They have been in contact with several vendors, and so they're kind of feeling that they've done what they can do on the reach out. It is the first of its kind. So I think that makes it a little clunky, people to understand. I think there's a little confusion around. So if you have a business that makes deliveries, such as office supplies, I'll use this as an example. You know, that's where the geomapping helps. And the reason the state sent, as I understand it, sent them to our, because those have the most current annexations in them on the geomap. And as an example, she pointed out, like out on Fairgrounds Road, versus Fairgrounds is county itself, but some of those businesses to the south are also still within the county. So that geomapping points that out. So then I talked to Tina at the chamber yesterday at a meeting and asked if she felt there was additional information they could share. They might bring it up at the legislative lunch tomorrow if there's time. But they've sent out letters and emails to at least their membership to alert, with not a lot of response. The Department of Revenue also offered, if council so desired, or our staff, they would do, I don't know what exactly she said. It wasn't a Zoom call or a Gmail, but it's, I almost kind of, where it would be live with one of their people. But so it would help, you know, if people are going to contact us, if we knew the business, because it is important. I did ask, okay, I didn't understand it. I'm now 15 days into it, and what happens? And she said, well, if it's a lodging property, hopefully they can go back, you know, to that person and say, you know, we missed this, we didn't, you know, do it correctly. Do you mind we put the 1% on your credit card? She said the other is that there won't necessarily be a penalty, but if you missed it and didn't collect it, you're responsible. Business is responsible. You know, and they'll show some grace, but not a lot. So those are some of the things I just wanted to pass on. I did bring it up at Downtown Casper Business Association this morning, and everybody looked at me. There was a really good turnout today. Everybody honestly looked at me cross-eyed and said, well, yeah. And so that was good. Yep. And collecting.
I just point out when Amber and I brought this up about a month ago and talked about it, the city did send out some information, but it was, again, it's like, it's not our responsibility, I guess, what we decided on to, but they did do, you know, courtesy send out information on it. So just to remind you that.
Yeah, did you say that? Department of Revenue notified businesses.
Yeah, several times.
I know my
It
own
wasn't very
experience.
blatant is what Amber, remember
Yeah.
she had said that she had gotten that letter and it wasn't like it stuck out. But just
My own experience has been.
Well, we appreciate it, Pat, for doing that. I know that Carter updated leadership today about that is going on. We appreciate your reaching out to the contacts that you have out there.
So if we do decide we want, further information, Department of Revenues, I just, somebody would need to call and set that up if so wanted. The other thing that we talked about was property tax, and the assessors are still trying to compile, and with the state's help, it's, I think, quite complicated between the long-term homeowner over 65, 50%, and then also the 25% residential, with some variables. So I don't know if Liam has necessarily put anything together, and I didn't ask. I saw a county commissioner at lunch, and I should have asked him if their association, my understanding was going county by county and outlining, but I don't think it's done, because that's what Brenda kind of indicated, that the assessors are still working on it. They have until the 4th Monday or Tuesday, by state statute, I think it is in April, to have all of that reconciled on their valuations. We'll tell you the senior district did get some preliminary information from the our county assessor, and that indicated on the 1 mil. So based upon the total valuation last year, which was like around 17 billion for the county, then you break that down to 1 mil. That was the 1.7 million. And of that, estimated from updated numbers that Tammy provided, the senior district potential loss is, so what's estimated right now is approximately 1.3 million versus the 1.7. And it's just on 1 mil. So that district. So I don't know, and that's a countywide. So.
And we'll be getting to more of it, obviously, the effects of the cuts and how that'll affect us in the next several weeks. So Carter, I think staff are going to come to us with recommendations and do a few things about that. So,
Mr. Mayor, to Councilor Sweeney's point, the assessor's been really, really good to work with us in terms of trying to understand what that figure looks like, so we have something to plan around. But I would agree that number could be worse than what we think it is. I sure hope not. But we do have a figure that we both feel pretty good about in terms of the city, the assessors at this moment to work with for the budget.
thank you.
And back to a comment, it is the state Department of Revenue's responsibility, not ours. But I think it's imperative that we do what we can, because it is a first of its kind. So, and I think we have done what we can. I think the state has. They're continuing to get calls and questions. But we're trying.
Thank you, Pat. Appreciate you. Kyle.
Yeah, thanks, Councilor Sweeney, for bringing that up. That was on my list. I understand it's the Department of Revenue's responsibility to inform and educate, collect those taxes, but that's semantics. The city's going to be looked upon as being the responsible party, I think, by most. So I do think we've done a great job, but I think we should still try really hard, especially in these first couple weeks, to keep educating that point to people because, I am worried. I do think the business owners bear responsibility for knowing these things, but also I am worried there's going to be people that get 6 weeks into it, we're not collecting that tax, are going to be on the hook for it, and they're going to be put in a tough spot. Likewise, once we've collected the revenue that we needed for the projects, reverting back to 5%, that's going to require a lot of education and information because I don't want people to get 6 weeks past that point and then have Department of Revenue claw back taxes that they were, passing through after we had already generated the revenue. So it is the first of its kind. Nobody, we haven't increased taxes since 70s. It's been 50 years. My guess is most business owners have never had to adjust their taxes. Very few businesses are probably older than 50 years in this city. So yeah, anything and everything. I know the city's been doing a great job, but I know there's going to be examples of that sneaking in and then sneaking out, and there's probably going to be some frustration resulting from that. But just want to make sure we do as much as possible, not necessarily our responsibility. Like Councilor Haskins said, we did pick a candidate. I'm really stoked about the person you'll see on our agenda next week to appoint. But I just really want to thank everyone that applied. We got some super well qualified candidates that all did great jobs in the interviews. And so I was just really happy to see the interest from folks in the community to contribute in this way. And just want to thank everyone that applied and interviewed with us. I spoke to Charlie Schaub yesterday. He is on the board of the Casper Ski Club, and he had some very kind words to say. They, for folks that are unfamiliar, they manage the facility just north of Amico Road by the event center. And if you'll remember from the 1 cent revenue, we had contributed $15,000 for them to do a membership card driven gate, kind of an electronic gate that swings up and down. And they said it's been a total game changer for them up there. They have gone from 40 members in 2024 to nearly 200 members now. They have invested $40,000 in new trap machines up there, looking to invest another $20,000. They've gotten new stands from Riverbend Roosters out on the way to Alcova, another great outfit. So lots of capital improvements being made. They've had a lot more success at the facility because they've been able to improve and increase access. So yeah, it was really cool to hear that success story. We've amended the lease, and the lease has gone up a little bit, but they were totally comfortable with that just because they've seen so much success as a result of installing that gate up there. If you've not been up there, I would definitely encourage you to go spend an afternoon shooting some targets. Membership's super cheap. They also have cool events throughout the year like Shoot Trap for Cap, which is a really neat fundraiser I've had the pleasure of taking part in. I was pretty unfamiliar with the facility until the last year or two, and I've been really impressed with the couple experiences I've had up there. So I would encourage you to go check it out. And then lastly, I saw that the boy that was responsible for the death of Lene Brown at Buckboard Park last year, he was sentenced to 42 to 75 years for second-degree murder. Hoping this provides some sort of closure to the family and the rest of the community looking for justice. In that case, it's a shame that that's kind of the the end result. Sounds like there's going to be an appeal, so we'll see if that sticks. But I guess I was unaware until today that one of his friends who he was communicating with the night of the murder and had asked to pick him up afterwards is the same boy that was killed a couple months ago, got shot also, and it was fatal. And so that just struck me. All these cases separately are really sad, but when you consider them all as a whole, I think it's like the sadness compounds. I think it illustrates that we still have gaps in the system and a lot of work to do to make sure we're providing the right intervention at the right time. I hope that these youth-driven groups that we're hearing from, Blue Heart Collaborative, the one through the county, I hope we'll get some recommendations from these folks or suggestions, recommendations, or services that they might provide to support resources, not only victims and potential victims of violent crime, but also the adjacent youth that are involved in this. Clearly there's a lot of overlap, and clearly the friends and family and of these youth that are engaging in these violence acts, they need support and services too. And so I just hope that we get something like that in the way of recommend. I would love to, try to be as proactive as we can, provide as much outreach as possible, because I just thought it was really sad that, there was a youth tangentially involved in one incident, and then a couple months later, they've also lost their life. So that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, appreciate it. I just have a couple items on mine. We have quarterly lunch with the attorney and Carter, vice mayor, and Lisa, I believe, to that on Friday. So I look forward to touching base with them. Then is the post legislative forum tomorrow? Yes. So that's tomorrow at 11:30. So I will be at that. All right. I think that's all we got. Just move right into the special meeting. Okay. So we will have a special meeting tonight. So I now call the April 8th, 2025 special council meeting to order. Please note that Councilor Pollock is with us virtually. Do I need to excuse? Okay, all right. I need to make a motion to excuse Matt Larson from the meeting.
So
moved by Councilor, sorry, I'm way off now because it's not a regular meeting.
Off the script.
Yes, exactly. Without a script. That's terrible, isn't it? Moved by Councilor Gamera, seconded by Councilor Haskins. Any abstentions or nay votes? All voting aye. That's it. Oh, sorry. I am completely off here. A notice of an executive session to take place at this date and during this meeting was given. We have matters to discuss regarding personnel. Therefore, the chair would entertain a motion to adjourn into an executive session. And at the conclusion of that executive session, to reconvene the special meeting solely for the purposes of adjourning the special meeting. Moved by Vice Mayor, seconded by Bond. There being a majority of members present and a motion to adjourn into an executive session has been moved and seconded. This motion requires 2/3 majority of the council present. Any abstentions or nay votes? All voting aye, say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. A greater than 2/3 majority of the council present voted in favor of the motion. We are hereby adjourned into an executive session.